It was the 4th of July, 2025. Across Tennessee, families gathered for fireworks, cookouts, and laughter. The air buzzed with celebration, the kind that makes people forget, at least for one night, the troubles of the world. But in the quiet town of Springfield, nestled in Robertson County, something far darker was stirring. A group of locals had gone down to the Sulphur Fork Creek, a winding waterway shaded by thick trees and bordered by muddy banks. The water usually ran shallow, rippling gently under the summer sun. Children often played along the edges, and fishermen sometimes cast their lines into the creek's calmer pools. But that day, a sickening sight drifted into view. At first, no one was quite sure what they were looking at. A pale object bobbed against the current, snagging on branches and debris. From a distance, it almost looked like driftwood or an animal carcass. But as it drew closer, reality struck with full force. It was human. A leg, bloated, discolored, and partially decomposed, it floated grotesquely in the water. The scene turned from holiday cheer to sheer horror. Someone dialed 911, their voice shaking as they reported the discovery. Within minutes, local police arrived, followed by investigators. Officers secured the area, pushing onlookers back as crime scene tape went up. The creek, once a place of peace, became a stage for something grim. Forensic teams carefully retrieved the remains. Reporters caught wind of the incident almost immediately, and whispers spread quickly through Springfield. Whose leg was it? How did it get there? Was there a killer on the loose? At first, the community assumed it was the result of an accident. Maybe someone had drowned, or perhaps wildlife had carried remains downstream from some unknown tragedy. But the more investigators looked, the less the explanation seemed ordinary. This was no accident. The discovery was the beginning of a story that would stretch back 2 decades, unraveling secrets tied to one of Tennessee's most haunting cold cases. For days, the leg sat in a forensic lab, examined with meticulous care. Investigators collected tissue samples, hoping DNA could offer an answer. Locals speculated endlessly, gossip spreading across diners, church pews, and barbershops. Some believed it might belong to a homeless man. Others feared it was linked to a hidden crime spree. Then, on August 13, 2025, the truth came out. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation announced that DNA testing had identified the remains as belonging to 68-year-old Joseph Frank Benton Sr. The name alone sent chills through Robertson County. Benton wasn't just anyone. He wasn't some unfortunate drifter or anonymous victim. He was a fugitive, a man who had spent years evading authorities, carrying with him a reputation for danger, violence, and secrets. His identification didn't solve the mystery, it only deepened it. To understand why Benton's death or partial death shocked Tennessee, one must step back into his tangled past. Joseph Frank Benton had always been a man who lived on the edges of the law. In 2024, he was indicted on over 40 separate charges. These weren't minor offenses. They included illegal possession of firearms, explosives, and the sexual exploitation of a minor. Police raids uncovered weapons caches that looked more suited for war than a quiet Tennessee home. Authorities described him as armed, dangerous, and unpredictable. His arrest had been long overdue. Benton had violated probation, ignored court orders, and slipped through the cracks of the system. Each time law enforcement closed in, he found a way to slip out. He became a ghost, hiding in plain sight, fueled by paranoia and an obsessive need for control. But Benton wasn't just a fugitive criminal. His name carried an even darker weight. For years, whispers linked him to one of the state's most tragic unsolved mysteries: the 2004 disappearance of 22-year-old Jennifer Wicks and her 2-year-old daughter, Adriana. It was April 2004 when Jennifer and her little girl vanished without a trace. They had been living with Jennifer's boyfriend, Joey Benton, Joseph's son. Jennifer was young, hopeful, and trying to build a stable life for her daughter. But according to friends and family, tensions in the Benton household ran high. Jennifer's mother reported her missing after days without contact. Police began searching, interviewing everyone who had seen her last. One name kept surfacing: Joseph Frank Benton. Investigators learned that Jennifer and Adriana had last been seen at or near the Benton property. Stories conflicted. Some claimed Jennifer had planned to leave to start over somewhere else. Others whispered that arguments had erupted, that she had clashed with the Bentons. Despite massive searches, flyers, and media attention, no trace of Jennifer or Adriana was ever found. Their case went cold, leaving a grieving family with nothing but questions. And Benton, though he was never officially charged, suspicion clung to him like a shadow. To many in Robertson County, he wasn't just a man with weapons and criminal charges. He was the man who might have known what happened to a mother and child who had vanished off the face of the earth. When Benton's leg surfaced in 2025, the Wicks case roared back into the headlines. Reporters dug through old archives, piecing together the connections. Private investigator Buddy Mitchell, who had worked on the case for years, stepped forward with chilling information. According to Mitchell, Benton's son Joey once gave an interview in which he claimed, flatly, that the girls were deceased, had been shot. Mitchell said he submitted that transcript to authorities, urging them to investigate further. But nothing concrete had ever been proven. Now, with Benton's remains turning up in such a bizarre fashion, the question became unavoidable. Did Benton's death hold the key to what happened to Jennifer and Adriana? Law enforcement began reassessing. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and local authorities returned to the Benton property, scouring for evidence. Advocates for the Wicks family pushed harder than ever, begging for a thorough search. The spotlight turned hot, and the story gripped the nation. But while investigators worked, the public speculated. Benton hadn't just died quietly in bed. He hadn't been found peacefully in his home. Instead, part of his body had washed up in a creek. That strangeness begged for explanation. Theory 1. Self-amputation. Some speculated Benton might have cut off his own leg, leaving it in the creek as a gruesome decoy to fake his death and throw off police. Theory 2. Vigilante justice. Benton's crimes, especially the charges involving children, had made him despised. Was it possible someone had taken justice into their own hands, killing him and dumping his body? Theory 3. Accidental death. Others believed Benton may have been injured while hiding, perhaps losing his leg in an accident, or even dying somewhere in the wilderness, with animals or water carrying his remains into the creek. The lack of clarity only fueled more questions. Was Benton still alive, out there somewhere, minus a leg? Or was this grim discovery all that remained of a man whose life was defined by crime and secrets? A holiday meant for fireworks turned into a nightmare. On the 4th of July, 2025, while families lit sparklers and children chased fireflies in the warm Tennessee air, a discovery in Springfield would change everything. Floating in Sulphur Fork Creek, caught against twisted branches and debris, was a human leg. Bloated, pale, and decomposed, it carried with it a secret buried for decades. That leg didn't belong to a stranger. DNA tests would reveal it belonged to a fugitive, a man linked to guns, explosives, child exploitation charges, and, most haunting of all, the disappearance of a young mother and her toddler in 2004. His name was Joseph Frank Benton, and his story was just as disturbing as his ending. It was just after noon when Springfield police received the call. A group of locals had been walking near the creek when one of them noticed something odd floating along the current. At first, they thought it was a mannequin leg or perhaps debris left over from a storm. The closer they got, the more unsettling the image became. The water rocked the object back and forth. A shoe was gone. The skin, waxy and mottled, bore the unmistakable look of human remains. The witnesses froze, realizing they weren't staring at garbage, but at a body part. They quickly backed away, whispering to one another in disbelief before one shakily dialed 911. Minutes later, sirens wailed. Police cordoned off the creekside, ordering civilians back. Detectives and forensic teams arrived, pulling on gloves and carefully navigating the muddy banks. The remains were pulled gently from the water, sealed in a body bag, and rushed to the medical examiner's office. The town buzzed with rumors by evening. People speculated about serial killers, missing hunters, or even cartel violence spilling into rural Tennessee. But no one could guess the truth. Forensic scientists began their meticulous work. The leg was decomposed but not beyond recovery. DNA samples were taken, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation fed them into their databases. Days stretched into weeks as speculation grew. Then, on August 13, 2025, the TBI made the announcement. The leg belonged to Joseph Frank Benton Sr., 68 years old, a man who had been on the run for more than a year. The news sent shockwaves through Robertson County. Benton wasn't some nameless drifter. He was notorious, a fugitive wanted on dozens of charges, a man whose life read like a blueprint for danger. And for the family of Jennifer and Adriana Wicks, who had vanished 2 decades earlier, the discovery stirred old wounds. Benton's story was a dark one. For years, he had skirted the edges of the law, always managing to stay one step ahead. In 2024, a grand jury indicted him on more than 40 charges. Authorities accused him of hoarding an arsenal of firearms and explosives. He faced charges of sexual exploitation of a minor, a crime that cast a chilling shadow over his reputation. When officers searched his property, they found stockpiles of weapons and materials that looked like the makings of something far worse. Authorities labeled him armed and dangerous. But Benton had disappeared before they could bring him to trial. For months, law enforcement hunted him. Benton became a ghost, vanishing into backwoods and side roads, evading capture at every turn. But his criminal record wasn't the only thing that made his name infamous. Benton was also tied to one of Tennessee's longest-running cold cases. In April 2004, 22-year-old Jennifer Wicks and her 2-year-old daughter Adriana vanished. Jennifer was last seen with her boyfriend, Joey Benton, Joseph's son. She had been living on the Benton property, trying to raise her daughter while navigating tensions within the family. One day, she and Adriana were simply gone. No goodbyes, no explanation. Jennifer's mother, desperate and terrified, reported her missing. Flyers were printed, search parties were formed, and investigators began combing through every possible lead. Very quickly, suspicion fell on the Benton family. Joseph Frank Benton was said to be among the last people to see Jennifer and Adriana alive. There were rumors of conflict, whispers of threats, but nothing concrete ever surfaced. Case grew cold. Despite extensive searches, no bodies were ever found. Jennifer's family clung to hope while quietly fearing the worst. Year after year, anniversaries passed. Candlelight vigils were held. Yet the mother and daughter remained missing. And Benton, though never charged, carried the weight of suspicion. The discovery of Benton's leg reignited interest in the Wicks case like gasoline on a fire. Journalists dug through archives, piecing together the old story and connecting it to the grisly new discovery. One of the most vocal advocates was private investigator Buddy Mitchell, who had spent years chasing leads for the Wicks family. Mitchell revealed a haunting detail. During an interview, Benton's son Joey allegedly admitted that Jennifer and Adriana were dead and that they had been shot. Mitchell claimed he handed this transcript over to authorities years ago. But without bodies, there was no proof. Now, with Benton confirmed dead, or at least partly recovered, Mitchell renewed his calls for a thorough search of the Benton property. He argued that evidence could still lie hidden on the land where Jennifer and Adriana were last seen. For Jennifer's family, the news was bittersweet. On one hand, the man long suspected of holding answers was finally gone. On the other, his death threatened to bury the truth forever. Benton's gruesome fate sparked countless theories. Some believed in the self-amputation theory. Benton, paranoid and cunning, might have cut off his own leg to fake his death, tossing it in the creek to confuse authorities while he slipped away. Others favored the vigilante theory. Benton's charges, especially those involving children, had made him despised. Perhaps someone, tired of waiting for justice, had taken matters into their own hands. Then there was the accidental death theory. Benton had been hiding for months, maybe years. Could he have suffered an accident while evading capture? Perhaps he bled to death in isolation, his body later disturbed by wildlife or water. Each theory carried its own logic. None carried proof. For Jennifer's mother, Charlotte, The discovery of Benton's leg was devastating and frustrating all at once. She had spent more than 2 decades demanding answers, raising awareness, and keeping her daughter and granddaughter's names alive in the public eye. She had always believed Benton knew more than he admitted. With his death, she feared those secrets had been silenced forever. But she also held onto a glimmer of hope. Maybe renewed attention would push investigators to search deeper, to uncover evidence that could finally tell her what happened to Jennifer and Adriana. The Wicks family's grief was compounded by exhaustion. 20 years of waiting had taken its toll, yet they refused to give up. For them, Benton's leg wasn't an ending. It was a reminder that the story wasn't over. Local authorities, along with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, announced they would continue to pursue leads. They urged anyone with information about Benton's final days or about Jennifer and Adriana to come forward. The public reaction was immediate. News outlets from Tennessee to New York splashed the story across headlines. Social media lit up with speculation, outrage, and grim fascination. Neighbors who once waved politely at Benton's home now shuddered, recalling uneasy feelings they had long ignored. Community members questioned how someone so dangerous had lived among them for years, hiding in plain sight. But as the dust settled, the case left more questions than answers. How did Benton end up in Sulphur Fork Creek? Was he killed, or did he orchestrate his own disappearance one last time? What really happened to Jennifer and Adriana in 2004? Could Benton's property still hold the evidence investigators missed decades ago? The questions gnawed at the public, and for the Wicks family, they were unbearable reminders of 2 lives cut short and forgotten by time. The story of Joseph Frank Benton reads like a Southern Gothic tragedy. A man armed to the teeth, accused of horrific crimes, forever tied to the disappearance of a mother and child. For 20 years, he evaded justice, and in the end, all that was left of him floated lifeless in a creek. His death brought no closure, only more mystery. And for the family of Jennifer and Adriana Wicks, the discovery was not justice. It was another cruel twist in a story that refuses to end. As investigators sift through old evidence and the public speculates on Benton's final moments, one haunting question remains. Did the truth die with him, or is it still waiting to be found in the shadows of Tennessee? What do you think really happened? Was Benton silenced, or did fate finally catch up with him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective could shine new light on this haunting mystery. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into true crime's most chilling cases. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.